When you add text to an image in Photoshop, it automatically appears on a special kind of layer called a type layer. Text on a type layer remains editable, so that you can always change its content or its appearance. And it has smooth edges when printed, even if you make the text a lot bigger. In this video, we'll practice adding text to an image. You can use this image from the downloadable practice files for this tutorial, or an image of your own. The tool you'll use most often to create text is the horizontal type tool. You can select it here in the Tools panel. Then go up to the Options bar and click on the Font menu. Here you'll see a list of fonts that you can scroll through to choose one you like. The list shows you a preview of what each font looks like. Or if you know the font that you want, you can just type it here in the font field. I'll type Georgia. And Photoshop shows you all available styles of that font. I'll choose Georgia Bold. If you don't have this font, choose a font of your own. Next, let's set the font size. This menu shows you the font size in points by default. By the way, the default size is very small on a large image like this. If you ever enter type and you can't see it, that's probably why. So just try again with a larger font size. Here you can type in a font size if you know it, or you can click this arrow and choose a font size from the drop-down menu. I'll choose a large font size. Let's use white for the text we're going to enter. To set the font color, go up to the Options bar and click the Font Color field. That opens the color picker, which we covered in an earlier tutorial in this series. To select white here, go to the large field on the left and click on white, and then click OK. If you want to type uppercase letters, as I do, press the Caps Lock key on your keyboard. Then click in the image and start typing. I'm going to type the name of a fictional tailor business. You can type any name you like. After you enter or edit text, you always have to accept it. One way to do that is to go up to the Options bar and click the big check mark there. If the text isn't where you want it, then go to the Tools panel and select the Move tool. Click in the image and drag the text where you want it. Now take a look at the Layers panel. You'll see that Photoshop has created a new layer for you, and it's even named it for you. The T icon on the layer indicates that this is a special re-editable type layer. Now let's say you want another type layer. Using multiple type layers will let you work with and position each one separately, just like regular layers. So let's go back to the Tools panel and select the horizontal type tool again. Then move into the image and hold down the Shift key as you click to start a new type layer. That assures that the new text will end up on its own layer rather than tacked on to the end of the first layer, which can happen if you start making one type layer too close to another. Let's choose some different options for this type layer. I'll go up to the Font menu, and this time I'm going to choose a different font and a smaller font size. And then I'll start typing. You can type what you like. At the end of the first line, I'm going to press the Return or the Enter key on the keyboard to add another line of type on the same type layer. When you're finished typing, go up to the Options bar and click the big check mark. As long as you still have the type layer selected in the Layers panel, and you still have the horizontal type tool selected in the Tools panel, you can change the options for this type layer. For example, if I want the two lines of type on this layer to be center aligned, here in the Options bar, I'll click the Center Align icon. Then select the Move tool in the Tools panel and click on the new text and drag it where you want it. And now there's another type layer over in the Layers panel. When you're finished, go to the File menu and choose Save As. In the Save As dialog box, it's important to save in the Photoshop format and to leave layers checked in order to retain your editable type layers in this working version of the file. If you need a copy to share, you can save another copy as a JPEG, but the JPEG won't retain your type layers. So those are the basics of creating text. Stay tuned for the next video where we'll see how to edit text. One of the great things about type layers is that they remain editable, and that's true even after you've saved and closed and reopened a document, as long as you saved it in a format that retains layers, like the Photoshop format. In this video, we'll look at some ways to edit type layers. If you're following along, you can use this image from the practice files for this tutorial, or an image of your own that has type layers. If you want to change all of the text on a type layer the same way, then here's what to do. Go to the Layers panel and select the type layer. Then go over to the Tools panel and select the Type tool. You don't have to highlight all the text on the layer. Now, if you want to make a change, let's say a change to the font size, go up to the Options bar and choose the option that you want. So I'm going to type in a different point size here in the font size field. And that affected everything on this type layer. The same is true if you have multiple lines of type on a layer. To see that, let's select this type layer in the Layers panel. We still have the Type tool selected in the Tools panel, so we'll go up to the Options bar and we'll click on the Font Color field. In the color picker, you can choose another color for this text. I'll move the color picker over so that we can see the text. One thing I sometimes like to do in the color picker is check only web colors, and that limits the number of choices, which makes it easier to choose a color. I'm going to choose this color gray, and you can see that that affected all the text on the selected type layer. And then I'll click OK. Now let's say that I've clicked on a regular layer and I'm doing some other work in this image, and then I decide that I want to change just one of the words on this layer. I don't have to bother selecting the type layer that contains these words. All I have to do is select the Type tool in the Tools panel, and then come into the image and click and drag over the portion of that text that I want to change, and that automatically selects the correct type layer in the Layers panel. Now that I have that text selected, I could change any of the options in the Options bar, or I can actually change the words of the text. So I'm going to type Fine Clothing instead of Custom Clothing. And then I'll go up to the Options bar and click the check mark to accept that change. Down at the bottom of this image, we have another kind of text. If I click on that, you can see that a type layer is selected, and on this type layer, there's a text box. This kind of text is called paragraph text. Let me show you quickly how this was made, and then I'll show you how to edit it. I'm going to come up here, and with the Type tool selected, I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click to start a new type layer. And then I'm going to drag. And as you can see, that created a text box. Now you can just type in this box, and the text will wrap when it gets to the edge of the box. Instead of typing, I'm going to go up to the Type menu and choose to paste this dummy text, just so that we have something to see in that box. Now, if I change the shape of the box, you can see that the text rewraps. I'm going to go up to the Options bar and click the Cancel symbol to delete that In Progress type layer. And now let's go down to the actual paragraph text in this image and click on it and reshape the text box to reflow this text. Hold down the Option key on a Mac or the Alt key on Windows as you hover over one of the edges of the text box, and then drag outwards to reflow the text from the center out. Then release your finger from the mouse or trackpad and release your other finger from the Option or Alt key. And I've managed to reflow the text from 3 lines to 2 lines while maintaining the position of the text box in the center of the screen. Now I'll go up to the Options bar and click the check mark to accept that change. When you're done editing type layers, you want to be sure to save in a format that retains layers, like the Photoshop format or the PSD format. So that's an introduction to editing type layers in Photoshop. Try these techniques on some of your own images. When you want to make an object that has a geometric shape, like a rectangle or a circle, you could use one of the selection tools and fill it with color. But there's another way to make a shape that gives you more flexibility, and that's to use one of the shape tools. To see how it works, open this image from the practice files for this tutorial. Then, in the Tools panel, go down to the Shape tools, which are located here. Click the Flyout menu to see the different shape tools. I'm going to choose the Rounded Rectangle tool. Using this tool will automatically create a layer in the Layers panel. So go over to the Layers panel and select the layer above which you want your new shape layer. I'll select the background layer. Now come into the image and click and drag to create a shape with rounded corners. Photoshop has made a new layer over in the Layers panel. This is a special kind of layer, a shape layer, that contains smoothed-edged objects that can be resized and reshaped and still retain their smooth edges. For example, we could reshape the roundness of the corners of this rounded rectangle shape. That's done in the Properties panel that popped out when we made the shape. Come down to this section of the Properties panel and hover over any of the corner icons, and then drag to the right to make the corners rounder. Because there's a highlighted link icon in between these four icons, all four corners change together. Let's close the Properties panel by clicking the double-pointed arrow at the top right of the panel, and then go to the Layers panel and click off the rounded rectangle layer onto a different layer for just a second. And as you do, take a look at the rounded corners, and you can see how smooth they are. Let's click back on the rounded rectangle layer again to see that we can also change the size of the entire shape and still retain the smooth edges. I'll go up to the Edit menu and choose Free Transform. And this time it says Free Transform Path, because Photoshop knows what kind of object we have on this layer. Hold down the Shift key to constrain proportions, and the Option key, that's the Alt key on Windows, to resize the shape from the center out. And then go to any of the corners and drag outward, and you can make the shape bigger. And while we're still in Free Transform, let's change the shape of this shape. I'll go to the bottom edge of the shape and I'll drag up. And then let's accept these changes by going up to the Options bar and clicking the check mark. Now, if you go back to the Layers panel and click on another layer, you can see that the edges of the shape are still smooth. Let's click on the rounded rectangle layer one more time to move the shape into place. I'll go to the Tools panel and I'll get the Move tool, and then I'll click and drag the shape using the pink Smart Guides that appear to align it to the other elements in the image. One of my favorite things about shape layers is the way that you can change the color of a shape layer on the fly. Go over to the Layers panel and double-click on the thumbnail on the rounded rectangle layer. That opens the color picker. As long as the color picker is open, when you move out into the image, your cursor changes to an eyedropper, and you can click on any part of the image to sample the color from there and automatically color your shape. Click OK to close the color picker. And you can reopen the color picker anytime the same way and choose a different color for your shape. In many ways, a shape layer acts just like any other layer. For example, you can change the opacity of a shape layer. To do that, go to the opacity slider at the top of the Layers panel and drag to the left to make the shape less opaque or more translucent. When you're ready to save an image that has shape layers, be sure to use the Save As command and save the working file in a format that retains layers, like the Photoshop or PSD format. That way, your shape layers will be available the next time you open the file so you can make changes to them. Take some time to experiment with some of the other shape tools that are located in the same place in the Tools panel, like the Ellipse tool, which you can use to make ovals and circles. Coming up, we'll explore the Custom Shape tool and discover lots of custom shapes that come with Photoshop that you may not know you have. One of the easiest ways to add an object to an image is to use the custom shapes that come with Photoshop. If you haven't discovered the custom shapes, here's how to find them and apply them. You can use this image from the practice files to follow along, or any image of your own. In the Tools panel, go down to whichever shape tool is showing at the moment, and press and hold, and from the flyout menu, select the Custom Shape tool. Go up to the Options bar for this tool, and over on the right, you'll find a Shape Picker. Click on the Shape Picker, and you'll see some icons of a few custom shapes, but there are lots more. If you click the gear icon on the right side of this drop-down panel, you'll find a long menu. From there, choose All. And that's going to bring in all these categories of custom shapes that you see listed here. If this message appears, click OK. Now go to the bottom right corner of the panel and drag down and to the right to stretch out the panel and see all the shapes that are there. My screen isn't large enough to show all of them, but there are many to explore. Since we're working on an image for a custom tailor enterprise, here's the perfect image, these scissors. and there are actually a couple scissors to choose from. I'm going to select this one by clicking on it, and then I'll click in a blank area to close the shape picker. Before I draw out a scissors shape with this custom shape tool, I'll take a look at the layers panel, and I'll make sure that I've selected a layer above which I want the new shape layer that Photoshop will make to be created. I've got the background layer selected. I'll move into the image, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key to constrain proportions so the scissors aren't distorted. And then I'll click and drag, and I have a scissors shape. I can change the size and the position and the color of this shape. Let's change the color to white. To do that, I'll go over to the shape layer that just appeared in the Layers panel, and I'll double-click the thumbnail on that shape layer to open the color picker. And then I'll select white, and I'll click OK. To make the scissors smaller, I'll go up to the Edit menu, and I'll choose Free Transform Path, and then I'll hold down the Shift key to constrain proportions, and I'll drag in to make the scissors smaller. When I think they're just about small enough, I'll click inside of that box and drag to position the scissors where I want them, right there. And then to accept all those changes, I'll go up to the Options bar, and I'll click the big check mark. I'll go over to the Layers panel, and I'm going to click on a layer other than the scissors layer to see the result. So as you probably discovered, the Custom Shape tool works just like the Rounded Rectangle tool that we covered in the last video in this tutorial, as well as all of the other shape tools. The shape on this shape layer remains editable, so you can change the color, the size, the position, and more anytime you want, as long as you save in a format that retains layers, like the Photoshop or PSD format. So have fun exploring and applying a lot of the other custom shapes that come with Photoshop.